you as the band, you know the framework and the road we're traveling, but you tune into what he's doing and you then listen to support him. You pull back. And with small teams like that, you can't have an attitude with each other and play good jazz. There can't be any infighting. You got to be on the same page and be playing the same song. And so taking that model, that mindset of how music happens, when you go to small teams, successful small teams, you got to be on the same page. You have to be positive. You have to be in tune with the customer.
All right, folks, it's time for our favorite podcast, Cut to the Chase. Are your customer expectations changing in ways which you cannot get a handle on? Do you need to get a handle on your customer expectations before they no longer become your customers? Today's guest is someone who brings a truly unique lens to the world of business, one that blends the discipline of music with the strategy of corporate leadership. Gerald Leonard is a culture change expert, author, and professional bassist, an amazing bassist, by the way, who has helped Fortune 500 companies and major organizations align their culture with their goals for growth, innovation, and long-term sustainability. In this episode, we're diving into how customer changes our expectations are evolving and what that means for companies that want not just to compete, but to lead. So we're going to explore this topic today. Gerald, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well. How are you? Thank you for having me, Greg. Really happy to be here.
Thank you for coming on.
Sure.
Why don't you share a little bit about your journey and how did you go from being a professional bassist to a corporate culture consultant?
Okay. Well, it's interesting because playing bass has a lot to do with culture. So here's what I mean by that. When you're playing bass and you are, playing, whether it's classical, you're playing funk or whatever, you're setting the tone for the song and for the style, which is the culture of the music. And so that's in my first book, I wrote about culture is the bass. So I started off as a classical and jazz bassist, did my bachelor's degree at a university in Ohio, Central State, and then went down to Cincinnati Conservatory, did my master's, moved to New York where I studied with David Walter, who was a classical bassist with Toscanini back in the day, and then did some ministry work and kept playing professionally throughout that time. And then as I was going, I got married and had a couple of kids, and I decided I didn't want to be on the road all the time, and so decided to stay in New York and play as a professional bassist. But to augment my living, I started consulting. I got into computers and I started consulting, and both worlds. I fell in love with both worlds. I fell in love with really working with clients and helping people because I was really good at it. And I love playing music. And so throughout my career, I have actually been doing both, if you will, full time in some capacity. And so over time, I started doing a lot of corporate speaking. And after I would talk, I would use examples from music. I would use examples from ministry. I would use examples from my life because I was just being who I am. And they would come up to me and I thought they would talk to me about the business. They would talk to me about my music background. And they just found that it was so interesting that you're this classical bass player and you played here and you did this. Oh, and by the way, we do want to hire you to come in and help us. And so that was really cool. So we built really great relationships. I actually had a lot of companies I learned from as I was implementing them with their processes. And I went to one workshop with Willie and Dee Jolly. Willie Jolly is one of the top 5 speakers in the world when it comes to motivational speakers. And he's also a jazz singer. And when him and his wife understood what I did and knew that I was a bassist, they were like, man, culture is the bass. What you do is so fundamental to company culture. And then they helped me to kind of tie it together. And I went on this journey of writing my first book, which was going back over my history and seeing how culture and bass playing and music really work together. And that led me to write, Workplace Jazz, A Symphony of Choices, now Productivity Smarts, and all of them lead with music as the metaphor because everybody can relate to hearing good music or going to a concert or listening to the radio. And if you can do that, then you can relate to what I write about in my books.
All right. So tell me about, talking about workplace jazz, what inspired the book and the concept? And talk to me about the dynamics of like a jazz ensemble,
Sure.
in this connection. I mean, a lot of people hear jazz and their brain kind of goes all fuzzy.
Yeah. Well, today in our work environments, things are moving incredibly fast, right? They're moving incredibly fast with AI, with automation, globalization, and so on. Well, jazz and work is also being done by smaller teams. I remember when I first started in the consulting, you'd go on a project and there would be 20 people that the client would hire. Now you go on a project and there's three or four of you guys, right? There's four of us. And so we went from like a big band to like a quartet or a trio. Well, when you're playing music and you're playing music in a trio or quartet or quintet, you really get to know each other. And especially when you're playing jazz, there's a structured process that you're following. And then once you play the melody a couple of times, let's say the sax player, he's now going to take a solo. And basically, the solo is just interpreting his interpretation of that music over that framework. And so, you as the band, you know the framework and the road we're traveling, but you tune into what he's doing and you then listen to support him. You pull back. And with small teams like that, you can't have an attitude with each other and play good jazz. There can't be any infighting. You got to be on the same page and be playing the same song. And so taking that model, that mindset of how music happens, when you go to small teams, successful small teams, you got to be on the same page. You have to be positive. You have to be in tune with the customer. You have to constantly be checking in with the customer. Hey, are we going down the right road? Are we giving you what you need? And realizing that, especially in major corporations. So I've done this with very large corporations of 10,000 people or even larger with multi-billion dollars of projects and programs. And here's one of the things that you learn. In the room are the people on the front row. But there are people that are in other parts of the organization, whether it's a state organization or a division or a country, that also are there to be a part of the performance. And if you don't take into consideration not only what the people in the room are doing, but figure out how to get the feedback from the people that are in the periphery of the organization and how they're going to apply what you're going to be providing and the services you're going to be delivering, you may end up with a failed project. And you also have to understand the culture in which they're working and operating. But when you do, you can have a great performance or a great project that serves the people in the room with you on the front row, but also the people in the back are also enjoying the process because you've taken in consideration how they work, what they do, and you've made it about them as well. So when you roll something out, they feel a part of what you're doing.
So, talk to me about some of the most common cultural pitfalls you are seeing in organizations and how do you fix them?
So some of the common pitfalls that I'm seeing is one, the idea of a lack of diverse thinking, right? Where if you get a few people in the room to get to, let's say the leaders trying to fix the problem, but they haven't spent time with the people on the front lines who are actually doing the work, right? Or the people in the periphery in the different divisions or regions that are actually doing the work. What ends up happening is that you end up building a solution to meet the needs of the people in the front room or in that front area, but the people who are actually using the tools you haven't consulted with, and they normally will push back. And what you find out is that they actually have a lot more social capital than the leadership does because they're engaged with each other on a day-to-day basis in their local vicinities where the leadership may be out of touch with what's going on. And that creates a really big problem because I've seen consulting companies come in and they have a really good knowledge of the process and the technology, but they are missing intimate insights on the way the organization works from a social and political standpoint. From a leadership standpoint of who's in the seats, it may be pretty clear from the org chart. But when you really look at the organizational network, there may be someone 2 or 3 levels down who has more authority, moral authority, and influence in the organization than the people in the room that you're talking to. And if you don't know how to get to those people or to figure out how to get in touch with what they're looking for and shaping your service, product, or delivery to meet their need, then you're going to end up rolling something out that people who really will be using it are going to resist. And they're going to put their paws down and they're going to say, hey, this is not going to help us. This, we don't like this. And they will push back and your project will fail. And I've seen that happen with companies. And the way I've always dealt with it is you come in, you meet with the core team, but then you say, hey, we're going to roll this out to different divisions. Who are some of the people who have great influence or that other people go to all the time? And they say, oh, well, this person in this division, oh, this person in this part of the state, or this person in that part. Can we get them in the room or get them on a call with us? And then we have the same conversation, but now we're asking their input. And guess what? We hear something very different. We hear a different tone, or we hear a different expectation, or we hear a different desire of how they want to use the tool. And when they've been heard and they know that we've heard them, then when you roll it out, they're willing to go out and say, hey, I've worked with this guys. They actually listen to us. This has worked, because everybody's going to be coming to them. Hey, Jim, did you like this? Does it work for you? And if they say no, then they're going to push back. But if Jim says, hey, they actually asked me to the meeting and included me in the process, then you're going to get more people engaged, because it really is the social network that has the biggest influence, more than the structural network in most organizations.
All right, so we started out this conversation talking a little bit about customer expectations,
Sure.
how they're evolving. The world is moving so fast. AI, everybody's all AI, AI, and I think people, aren't grounded anymore in terms of some of the basics and fundamentals. But in the context of customer expectations, where do you come in? I mean, I could tell you in my world, I'm an attorney. In the old days, a new client would call me up looking to hire me, and I knew I had 24 hours to call that person back, otherwise they might leave. Now, if I don't call them back, like within 2 minutes, they're gone. They already found another attorney. So I know in my little world, that customer expectation has changed, and I have had to reorient my office to, okay, that is a number one priority. Call them back right now.
Exactly. And so, for most of our customers, they're used to right now services, right? And so you have to think of things when you're rolling out services, to whether you have a chat bot in the beginning where they can integrate with a chat bot to know that I'm talking to someone, or someone's recording my information, or you have a service, like you said, you have people on the front lines who are willing to return those phone calls right away. Because if it's more than 24 hours, you're going to lose them, right? Because if they call and they haven't heard back from you within that 24 hours, more likely you're going to lose them. And it's very likely now that when someone calls, that they're going to be willing to wait for a long period of time, a week or two, for you to get back to them. Because the world that we live in is, hey, if I got your phone number, I'm not going to just call you. I'm going to text you.
Yeah.
So I'm going to look for you to respond right away. And so in my world, if a customer reaches out, most of them, especially if they're working with me closely, they have my text number, they have my phone number. And most of them, and I will tell them up front, hey, if you really have a concern or a need, don't even bother calling me, just text me. That'll be the fastest way to get me, because I'm always going to see my text coming in, even if I'm in a meeting, and I'll be able to say, hey, in a meeting, I'll call you right back, or something along that line. So at least making yourself accessible. Now, you also have to set boundaries, right? Because it really is unrealistic for you to be on 24/7. And so you either have to use technology, and this is where, not being afraid of AI and afraid of some of the automation, but setting up systems that can engage with customers when the customer wants to be engaged with, even though we as human beings, we're not technology. We still need 8 hours of sleep. We still need to disengage. And because again, if you're just working around the clock, pretty soon you're going to have a couple of hours that you're going to be very productive. And then the rest of it is going to be sucky work. You're not going to do your best, because your brain needs to step back and get away from it. I call it, and it's something that's out there called Pomodoros. It's working in a structured fashion where you have deep work for, let's say, 25, 40 minutes, and then you step away. Well, that happens when it comes to customers. You can't work with a customer all day long until their brains are scrambled eggs. They need time. You need time to take a break. And if you have multiple customers, then you need to set up systems that can engage with the customer and have either technology or people in place to get right back to them so that you can work in a rhythm and you can figure out that rhythm of how to work.
All right. So, I'm assuming that there's a lot of corporate denial, that there are some corporations out there, leaders in their companies that say, we got a great product, or we got a great service. We're marketing, we have excellent CFOs managing the money, but it's still not working and we can't figure it out. And it's nothing that we're doing. It's just something else. I mean, is there an element of denialism at the top that's keeping some of these corporations from letting someone like you come in and moving the needle forward?
I would say yes. And I think what happens there is when a leader gets so focused on them having to figure it out and do it with their team themselves, and yet they're not making progress, that's when they need to then, really be have create some candor within the organization and begin to have team meetings where they're engaging with the front line. When you think of organizations, I'm thinking like I love Toyotas, I love Lexuses because they build great cars. And here's the reason why they build great cars. They build great cars because they've given the people on the front line the authority to pull the cord, to say there's something that's not working. If you're not giving your people the authority to pull the cord and say that something's not working, and you're then willing to listen and work with them, then and if you're just pushing your own agenda, you're going to get people who are not going to pull the cord. They're not going to tell you what's not working and what's wrong. And so you're just going to be kind of in that state that you mentioned where they're working really hard, but they're not making the progress. You can break that minutia by engaging the people all across the organization to be willing to give you feedback. And if you can get your organization to buy in, and people buy into, I talk about this in my first book, Culture is the Base, people buy into what they help create. It may be your vision for the company. It may be your idea for the product. It may be your idea for the mission of the organization. But to get people to buy in, they need to help you build it. If they help you build it and they get a little bit of skin in the game and they are being compensated for helping you to build something, then you're going to get their whole selves to the game. You're going to get insights, you're going to get intuitions, you're going to get understandings from different parts of the business to help you work through and find those bottlenecks and those issues, right? It's kind of like the theory of constraints. You're going to have people helping you to identify the constraints and the bottlenecks in your business that you at the higher level may never see because you're not close to it. So you have to then entrust that the people that you've brought on, that you brought them on because they're good people, they have the skills and so on, and you build a relationship, and then you give them the authority and the ability to run their part of the business, but to engage with their employees. I found that when organizations listen and they have an open door policy around bottlenecks and issues, and it's not that we find something we're going to get fired, it's we find something we're going to work on it and fix it together and create buy-in. Those are the organizations that work through even the most difficult challenges and have been around for years and years and years. The ones that don't, they're only around for a little short period of time.
Do you find that most of your customers know what the problem is and can't solve it, or don't even know what the problem is? They just know something is not working.
Sometimes they don't know what the problem is. And sometimes they think they know what the problem is and it's not the problem. And so it really requires, it's not like, someone like myself comes in and we have this magic wand that we wave and we just sit there and say, oh, that's your problem. We need to sit. What I try to do is I sit next to my customer at the same table. So instead of sitting across from them, I want to sit on the same side with you and look at the problem together. And then talk openly about where things are. What's working, what's not working. What do you want things to be like? How do you want things to do? And so on. And is it a matter of, do we have the right people? Do we have the right processes? Do we have the right technologies? Do we have the right insights? And if we don't, then what do we have to do to get them? And again, many of those answers may not come from the people in that room. Some of those answers may come from the people who are outside that room who are actually doing the work that can then tell us, oh, well, here's what the problem is with that process because I have to go to John and John never knows this and this happens and that happens. But if we were just to go and do it this way and put the data here, we would all have access to it. Oh, never even thought about that. And so you have to engage people from that perspective to get that holistic insight into the organization and those problems.
Uh, I'd like you to share a story or an example of a company that has successfully adapted its culture to better meet changing customer demands and how you came in and made it happen.
I'll give an example of a transportation organization. I won't give any detailed names because I don't have the right to put their information out there. But I was working with a very large transportation organization, and they were having a lot of challenges with their programming and schedules and just delivery on time and things like that. And they had actually brought in a consultant to help them with this, but the consultant was very much focused on the solution and the tool and not understanding that the people in the culture of the organization didn't want the latest and greatest technology. They just wanted processes that worked and they wanted better data. And so when we stood back and said, hey, we're going to use the same technologies as other group use, but here's how we're going to do it. We're going to automate as much as possible around this solution, and we're going to hide the complexity of the technology, make it really easy. And what are the top 3 or 4 things that need to happen? Well, we need to make sure that if we change dates across the system, that it ripples out and that it informs the other systems that those dates have changed. So finance knows about it, this group knows about it, and so on and so forth. Schedules can become really complicated, so we need to streamline that process. The baselining of the information needs to be done in a way that is automated and so on. And so by learning what those core critical few activities were, mapping those out, automating around that, and only giving the users 2 to 3 things to do and making the training so that it's almost like you got an iPhone. You never have to sit through a training class when you get your iPhone, right? You go to Verizon or whoever you buy the iPhone from, they transfer your data. They say, here's how you get in. This is what you do. And they give you a phone. And guess what? You walk out making phone calls and taking pictures. Now, there's a lot more that this thing can do, right? It's a lot more that it can do. But the critical things that you want to do, make phone calls, take pictures, listen to music, I can do those things. I'm happy with the technology and it does it perfectly. Well, now once the customer gets used to those things working well, now you're saying, you know what? This thing can actually do a lot more complicated technical things. It can actually write code. It can dictate. It can create videos. It can do all these other things. In the beginning, they didn't care about those things. They wanted to know, can I do the 3 basic things that I needed my technology to do? Well, if you can come in a large organization and figure out what those 3 things are, automate, systematize everything else, make it really simple, and where they see the technology is going to make their personal lives better, then you got them engaged, you got them hooked. And that's what I was able to do with this really large organization. And they were then got to a point where they said, hey, you know what? We can't let this technology go. We got to keep working with it. And so they began to make it a little bit more complex because they had gotten really comfortable with the 3 to 4 things that we gave them to do. And they're still using this technology today after a number of years of leveraging it and using it. And it automates the system. It has nightly processes that automate. There's 20 other systems that get data from this system. There's data that's published to the public from this system. But because we've automated it so much, there's only 3 or 4 people that have to oversee it and manage it. And there's even 1,000 users that directly input it. And there's over 10,000 users that are impacted by it. And so, again, you focus on what are those 3 or 4 critical things, and then how can I provide those in a way that it's easy for the customer and they can see personally, right? They can see personally that, hey, because of this system, I can make my son's ball game. Because of this system, I'm not working weekends anymore. Because of this system, my life is better. Well, if that's the case, that's a system you're going to want to embrace.
I definitely hear that. All right. So I see that some of your clients, Microsoft, Verizon, we've been talking Fortune 500. Are you like limited to certain industries or just big companies, or are you across the board? Where are you at?
I try to focus on certain industries. So obviously, Microsoft, Verizon has been a couple of my clients. I have some fintech clients. I have some clients in transportation. I have some retail clients. And so what I try to do is focus on certain industries that I can go deep. My team and I can go deep in as far as the industry knowledge. But because we're using our skill set is around sustainability, around project portfolio management, around AI, and around leadership development, that can be leveraged across any industry. So I have partnered companies that are in the pharmaceutical industry. I've consulted in the pharmaceutical industry in the past. And so it can actually be done in any industry. But what I try to do is focus on certain industries so that we can, from a knowledge standpoint, go deep with them in their area of expertise. But if a company called me that I didn't know anything about their business, I could still take those concepts or those, those skill sets, capabilities, sustainability, portfolio management, AI, and adopt it to their industry and in their business with a little bit of insight and working together with the client.
All right. So I'm going to end this episode and you're going to come back on another episode to talk about
Sure.
another one of your projects because I know you've enjoyed yourself. All right. I'm going to last question.
Yes.
I saw your TEDx. I know you're a professional musician, bassist. So you don't always take the lead as a bassist. I know that because I've done a little bass work myself.
Yep.
But you talk about practice is the performance.
Right.
Talk to me and this program strong. What do you mean? How does that translate into the world of business, art, sports, music, all that?
It's as simple as this. The way you practice is how you perform. The way you practice is how you perform. I love NFL football. And when you watch those guys at the last quarter and he throws the ball to the sideline and the guy catches it and he has his tippy toes inbounds, you're like, how in the world did he do that? Well, he practices that every day. So if you want to be able to perform under pressure in very difficult situations and bring your best self, then you have to be that way every day. You have to learn about neuroscience. You have to learn about kinesiology. You have to learn about physiology. How do you position your body? What do you focus on? How do you think? So there's things that I do now in my life that every day helps me to prepare to perform, whether I'm doing a podcast, whether I'm writing an article, whether I'm leading a team, whether I'm meeting a customer, whether I'm leading one of my own podcasts. The things that I've learned to do is to prepare me every day to perform at my best. And that's really just having a mindset that, hey, if when I wake up, I'm going to de-stress my body. I'm going to embrace life. I'm going to be prepared. I'm going to have my list of activities. I know what my intentions are for that day. I know where I want to go and what I want to get done. I know when I walk into a meeting, I've already got a call plan of what I want to share, what I want the customer to believe, and what I want to get from them and what I want them to get from me. So when you're constantly preparing that way, because for professional musicians, even the most professional musician is only on stage 5% of the time. The other 95%, they have to practice. So if you see a musician who's performing at their highest, that means that they're practicing at their highest level all the time. So when they get on stage, they're doing what comes natural.
Yeah,
And that was
yeah.
the whole intent behind that TEDx, was that we perform in public the way we practice. And I found that, there's three things I learned in my life as a young musician. One, you got to practice as a young bassist. You got to practice. Well, two, you need a coach. And three, you need a band. And what I discovered is that those three elements have served me throughout my life. As a writer, I realized that I had to practice writing. I needed a coach, someone who was a really professional writer who could coach me on writing. And I needed a band. I needed an organization I could hang out with of writers to talk writership with. When it came to technology and AI, I needed to practice building AI systems. I needed professors or coaches who were AI experts. And I needed a community of other people who around AI that I could talk shop with take it from sustainability, take it from project portfolio manager, take it from being a CEO, take it from being a bassist. Those things, those three things are so critical to that practice as a performance concept. You got to practice, you got to do deliberate practice. And that is being intentional about what you're working on. And then having your coach, and your coach has to be a tour guide, not a travel agent. A travel agent is someone who says, hey, I've been there. Well, no, I can tell you how to get there. I've never been there myself. I can tell you how to get there. A tour guide is, I've been there 100 times. I've been on that mountain 100 times. I can show you where to step, what to look for, what not to look for. And then the band is, you want a community of people that you can talk shop with, because that sharpens you around your concepts and insights.
All right. That is going to do it for this episode of Cut to the Chase. This is Gerald Leonard. If your customer expectations are just going all over the place, you don't know what to do, this is your man. He has had 2 decades of experience as a strategic project portfolio management consultant. He's a book author, including Culture is the Bass and Workplace Jazz, which I have not read, but I want to, and I will get around to it, and is a culture change expert, professional bassist as well. Gerald, what's the best way to get in touch with you?
They can reach me on my website at geraldjleonard.com. And if you reach me there, you can reach out to me, and you'll see Jack Canfield, Les Brown, and my TEDx, my podcast, all the stuff that I'm doing. And there's a form on there where you can reach out to me, and it'll come right to me personally.
All right, that'll do it. Gerald, thanks for coming on the show, and I'll see you in a couple of weeks.
Very good. Thanks for having me.
All right, take care. That'll do it for this episode of Cut to the Chase. Share, subscribe, rate, review, comments below if you're on YouTube. Okay, take care, everybody.
That's all for this episode of Cut to the Chase. But before you go, will you open up your podcast app and give us a 5-star review? You can also leave a comment about what you liked most or other topics you'd like us to cover. And please be sure to subscribe so you don't miss any upcoming shows. Thanks, everybody. Be safe out there.